Hello and welcome to MarketMuse Content Strategy webinar today. This is Jeff Coyle. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer for MarketMuse. And today's webinar will be about technology and data that fuels high quality content. Today I have with us an investor. He's a practitioner and an expert on the characteristics of what makes a great content strategy. And along with that, he's a practitioner of using the technology solutions that grow efficiency, build up the value of his investments and reduce errors. And that's something that we'll be getting into in detail. Before I finish that introduction, I wanted to note that just some housekeeping, that there's a questions box on your bottom right of your screen in most setups. Feel free to ask any questions under the sun for both my guests and myself. Anything about content strategy and really anything about anything related to search or anything in between. And then also the recording will be sent out in a few days, and you'll be able to have access to review the recording of this video. So without further ado, just want to introduce my guest today. He's a partner at Growth Partner. He's also the co-host of the Opt Out Life, which is a really interesting effort that he's been working on. And so, hey, this is Nate Broughton.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me, man.
And for sure, thanks to you for making time with us today. And so, before we get into the details of some of the topics we were going to talk about related to content strategy, tell me a little bit about Growth Partner and how it's evolved over the years, and
Well,
what
it
kinds
has
of things you're
evolved.
working on.
It has evolved a lot. I mean, it's basically a holding company that has capital and marketing expertise. These days, I have a few partners in it in San Diego. We own a few different online marketing agencies. One specializes in the healthcare industry and some e-commerce brands as well. And it's really just a holding company that I've had over the years to kind of be the place where I've housed a bunch of different products that and websites that relied heavily on search. Lead generation has been a big key component of the projects we've done, and it's just a nice name, right? Growth Partner. It can be anything, so we keep using it over and over.
It just feels like you're going to be sitting on my shoulder helping me grow my company.
Right. It's friendly.
I know that's the plan, right? And just for
Yeah.
fun aside, you're in Mexico right now with War Room. What's been going on this week? Yeah.
I think there's 150 people down here, maybe a little bit more. Punta Mita, kind of an exclusive mastermind group. I've been to a few of their events before, but some of the best in digital marketing. So really good networking. Also some really cool behind the scenes looks at people's businesses. It's the people behind Digital Marketer, Traffic and Conversion, all those guys. So if you've ever been to any of their events or aware of them, I'd pay attention to them because I've learned quite a bit. And yes, I'm sitting in the above my laptop looks beautiful, behind me looks terrible, but trust me, it's very nice here.
Well, excellent. And you did mention San Diego. One thing that to note for listeners, so this is MarketMuse will be in San Diego on April 8th at Content Marketing Institute's Content Tech. So if you're anywhere around San Diego or want to go there, a great time to go would be April 8th. So we'll all be there for sure. So yeah, and let's get started, Nate, with just the topic for today. Was really to get into the content creation process. So, our background, I've known you for, gosh, nearly 15-ish plus years. Been in the search engine optimization game, the content marketing, content strategy game, kind of before it was a thing. The one thing that is a parallel to all of your projects and all of your companies has been, planning. Really thinking about building a great operating procedure, really leveraging subject matter expertise, subject matter experts, and building things that not only are fun projects, but they're also profitable. So I've got some thoughts about things that we can talk about today. But from your standpoint, how important is planning to when you enter a new site, when you're building a new site, or when you purchased a site? How much do you do before you sign the bottom line on a purchase?
I mean, I think it's the secret sauce. It starts there, and I'm doing it right now. We're launching a handful of new sites in the healthcare industry, and I've continued to do it in recent years. And MarketMuse has been a big part of that. But I can tell you, it's weeks, if not a couple months, of using tools like MarketMuse and some others, competitive research tools, to find gaps in what you're going to be building. Like you may have a great idea or an ambitious idea to build a website around divorce in California. I've been helping an attorney with that. And that's all fine and good, but we know that's competitive.
Right.
And the best way to give yourself a leg up and to ensure that time and money you're investing is going to prove its worth is to plan all this stuff out and say, what are the first 50 pages I need to create? What are all the subheadings and headings and topics I want to hit on? I figure out all that stuff before we ever put up a site. We put up a splash page and then we really get to work. We build out an editorial calendar. We start building out these outlines, and I know we're going to talk in more detail about that, but
Yeah.
it's paramount to the process, and it's something that I feel like I'm pretty good at and have a unique skill at, and really it's what, when I interact with potential partners and I consult, it's the one thing people look to as like the secret sauce that is really effective.
So what research processes and how has your research process evolved over time? With, so many of these things have been touted as automated, but how much of it is truly, still manual? What are the processes where you found efficiency gains? And then you mentioned specifically gap analysis. That's a hotly contested thing in our world. It's to say, what is a gap? What does a gap mean to you when you're looking into this? Is it a gap in, a potential customer or reader intent? Is it specifically in competitive, as an output of competitive cohort profiling, where you said no one in the divorce space in California is thinking this way? This is a way for us to be differentiated. Or is it specifically just something where you're finding keyword gaps? What types of gap analysis are you doing, and what of all of the things you're doing do you consider to be manual versus do you wish it was more efficient?
Well, that's a lot of questions, Jeff. I'm going to answer them all.
That's what I do. That's what I do.
That's what you do. On my podcast, now I know what it feels like to be on the other side. Well, I think that a lot of
I'll
it
plug
still is
that later,
manual.
Nate. I'll plug that.
Okay. All right. Opt
Yeah.
out. Here we go.
Yeah.
It's still really manual. I think that it's hard to automate it. I think the tools are more powerful to deliver the insights. But I mean, first and foremost, I just Google a bunch of stuff. I want to find gaps in search results if I'm going after divorce, or if I'm going after some of the things we did with eligibility.com, which is a site I built over 16, 17, 18. I'm Googling criminal record expungement, and then all the Google suggest terms around it. And I'm looking for gaps in, like, who's ranking for all these terms. If it's the same 10 websites, and some of them are government websites, and they seem like really powerful websites, then I'm a little less excited, and I'm going to go deeper to try to find things to go after. When you're launching a new site, you've obviously got what we used to call the sandbox in the old days. It's going to take you some time, and you're
Mhm.
going to have to earn your keep in layman's terms. And I know that's still the case. So what I'm looking for is search result pages where I'm seeing pages ranked that I think aren't that strong, that aren't showing up on some of the top tail terms. And I start there, and then I go plug those keywords into the keyword tools like MarketMuse, like SEMrush, like Ahrefs. I still kind of poke around all of them, but the
Mhm.
insights you can get really quickly from a MarketMuse are like, here's 25 related keywords that you right after plugging one in spit out. Here's how all the competitors ranking for those, and you guys have those nice yellow, red, green bars that pop up. What keywords are they missing? So you'll start to find gaps and say, one of the top things in MarketMuse is this keyword that I know has decent search volume, is related to what I want to compete for. I've looked at the search results and saw it's not competitive, and MarketMuse is telling me these guys don't even have it on their page. That
Right.
becomes something I highlight, throw into my master Excel file for potential top 50 pages I'm going to create, and on we go.
I love how open and honest you are that it is a master Excel file, and that's totally fine. So you're really speaking about page level gaps after assessing, with through just because you've been doing it for a long time, that the competition that exists within the organic search profile. So it's to say this is a page that these pages are not what I would equate to being high quality. So you're making that judgment, and then that's something you can get validation for with as you described with MarketMuse, to say that that's a page that has a lot of gaps. But also, if you're looking at a search engine results page, I'm sure you're looking for what search engine result page features are there, and then also who is performing well when you're looking at it as you described. It tells the story of what you need to build, right?
It does. It does. Are there zero results popping up in there? Are there a lot of people bidding on the keyword?
Mhm.
And then also what, Google suggests questions are plugged in, and then definitely the stuff at the bottom too. Because obviously, if you want to go after divorce California, that's not the best place to start. But maybe there are questions around it, like how much does it cost to get divorced in California, right? Like, I'm very happy to build a long kind of pillar or supporting pillar piece of content around that early on to show some momentum, to have a chance to rank for something, to know that I'm going to have a better chance of ranking for that early on than the other spots, and
Mhm.
build from there. And I find those things inside tool, even free tools like Answer the Public, but I know you guys are good at suggesting questions as well. And I use all those things in aggregate. I export all the results, and I start to look for patterns and just kind of test the search results to feel like, these are the top 20 things that I feel like we can realistically compete on. And they're all going to be relevant to going after divorce California in 18 months when it's a lot more realistic for us.
That's such a great point, and I think something that you said really hits on, something that we speak about a lot is that past performance, when it's within the topic landscape that you're focused, can give you a predictive analytics indicator that you're going to have a chance if you put your best foot forward, and that's something that the two pieces of that is you've got to know how to predict it. And then you also have to put your best foot forward with the page. What are the
Right.
things that you're thinking about when you're researching topics that you've had historical success? And then, how does that dovetail with when you're analyzing a site that already exists?
Well, I'll start there. When I'm analyzing, so I will click around the search results to see who's ranking, and start to, and sometimes I can tell if people are deploying these types of tactics or not. It's kind of rare, but it's kind of funny to see when you're like, oh, they're going deep with their content and adding all these related subheadings, and maybe they're a client of Jeff's here, or a user of the software. But I look for those things. Like I look for what related questions are those pages addressing, and I'll start to collate some of those manually as well. If I see a few that are intuitive and are on a couple of the different pages, I'm probably going to include that in the ultimate outline I'm going to create and give to my writers. So I'm doing manual process looking at that, and maybe those become the keyword gaps too that you go after. Maybe it's a frequent subheading you see on a couple thousand word page on a really strong site,
Mm-hmm.
in divorce or in healthcare. And I'm not going to compete with WebMD today, but maybe their fourth subheading on this big topical page is a place where I can start, and I'll go out and build a deeper outline for that and
Mm-hmm.
then go after it that way. So I'm always just feeling around. I mean, some of it comes down to just, playing. I think being a good SEO means like having a bit of an art form to it, and looking for
Right.
these gaps. And part of it's feel. And then you
Yeah.
also have to try to think like a user for a second too. Like that's part of the hardest part to pass down as you're trying to create a process for this is that people understand, I think, using the tools, exporting the data, creating an outline that mimics one that I've given them as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And even the writers sometimes forget to write for a user, but it's like this, we needed to give them a complete answer in a good sequence too, where you're not just putting
Mm-hmm.
like XX Australia because it came up as one of the suggest terms near the top. If you need to work that in near the bottom, that's fine. But address this in the who, what, where, when, why, how way that you would want to understand a topic yourself, and that's kind of the final run through. I
Yeah,
think
it's
of
really what makes you truly the expert of being in
Mhm.
Southern California. Does the rest of the site tell the story that you actually know something about running a legal concern in that area, or does it not? Did you just blow it off as a landing page? It's not going to do as well. It's an unnatural situation. And
Yeah,
so it's
and I want to make a point too on that, because I think that a divorce attorney that's worked for 20 years in California is no question a subject matter expert. But when you try to translate that expertise into a website that checks all these boxes, there can be things that they forget that they know. So your goal is kind of like, let's lay out all the topics that you are an expert on in a logical way. Let's ask all those questions and get you to answer them. I think there's a big miss a lot of people have where they do have that expertise, but they don't put that into a logical structure to build a website that Google's going to love in 2019.
oh, I live it every day, Nate.
I know you do, and it probably
When,
upsets you more than it
It
upsets me,
does.
Jeff.
It bugs me so much when you have a subject matter expert as part of your, if you're an agency, your client, or you've hired one on purpose. It's not just about them answering the topics that you've put out there. It's
Right.
get all that juice out of their brain. I mean, everything putting a pad in their pocket even. And when you think about something that you may be the only person that knows, they may be the only person that knows, or some special tip, some angle on their industry, you couldn't possibly know. You couldn't possibly know how the common 3 or 4 ways that people misfile an addendum to a divorce decree.
Right.
I couldn't possibly know that, but they know those mistakes happen. It's using those subject matter experts to your advantage. It's interviewing them. It's making that a consistent process that's going to give you those diamonds. And when you can weave in those those pages that truly tell the story that you're an expert, whether they're going to generate direct traffic or not, when you can weave them in to your topic research driven content strategy, things start getting easier. And that's when it gets really fun. And I'm sure you're experiencing that with that industry, because that's a extremely tough one, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard for sometimes it's hard for a client if you're an agency setting, or for even an entrepreneur to do that, and the client's like, I want to rank for this, I want traffic, I want sales. It's like, if we want to get to that point, the way to play the game today is to get everything in your brain in an organized way onto this website, and we'll
Right.
get there slowly. We'll build a house that starts with these how-to questions that we're going to rank for those, and then we'll slowly move up. I think getting that buy-in and having that sort of approach, as we've
Yep.
said, very effective right now.
And one thing I look for, and just the similar thing, in that type of situation where they haven't had a history of doing this, in a way that really exhibits their subject matter expertise, is also to look, if you have any, especially if it's local, you can look at another location, somebody that has done a great job. How long did it take them to do that? How long does it take them for their new content to perform well? How long does it take for their content updates, if they do them, to have some sort of reward? All of those factors are really important in that research process. And I think that leads to a really, a good question for you is, how often do you update content, as a process, or is it something you do when you see particular signals, or North Star metrics?
It's a bit of a mix. It's a good question. Not too frequently, once or twice a year, maybe, on high value, high volume kind of keywords or keyword clusters. I pay attention to the search results. If I see like there's a lot of competitors who are, they're indexing dates and updating content, I feel a little bit more of an onus to do that. But with eligibility.com, we launched the site in 2016. We wrote 500 pages of content, which was stupid at the time. But then we went back, and in early 2017, we consolidated a lot of them and started using some of these tools in this process as it became more well known. And then we updated a lot of the content for that year. And some sites like that one we were talking about, government programs, there sometimes are yearly updates to them, whether it's based on budget or allocation or changes in qualification standards. So some of your content that you're doing or your website focus might put an onus on you to update it every year or so. But I think if you're going after high volume stuff like that, it makes sense to once a year do that. And it's not a bad little SEO thing to stick a content updated on recent date in there, because that can't hurt. No.
It can. So take a step back. I think the audience would love to hear kind of that story of what made you want to buy, what made you want to create that site. What process you went into. You said, "Hey, that was stupid," but why was it? Why was it stupid? Why was the way you did that not as efficient as you would have liked to have done it, or if you went back and did it again? I think you can really learn from. We can all really learn from kind of what drove you to want to be in this market in the first place. What opportunity did you see? And then what are the things you learned from that first swath of content that you launched?
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a powerful story because we got from beginning to kind of a nice endpoint. And there were some challenges and some success, and it's informed how I do things now. So why I wanted to get into that, I guess, broad vertical was I'd done a lot of stuff, as you know, in VA loans, FHA loans. These are government home loan programs. We had the largest VA loan bank in the country. I used to have a site that was tops for FHA loans that I sold to a will not be named company. And so I knew a lot about government programs from that. I also had some friends who were doing some stuff around disability for attorneys. So I started to connect the dots and say that, all these programs are government programs. They have high awareness. but there's always a commercial component to them in the end. They have to, if you want them, you usually have to hire an attorney or a mortgage broker or something like that. It's not like you just walk in the government office. So it's a business opportunity. And as search has gotten more competitive and just where it's gone, I think there's a lot more early searches. You can catch people earlier in the process and obviously retarget them, follow them around. And I think websites that, this kind of speaks to what this all does, websites that have all that early search stuff, qualification questions, like that's what we're talking about here. And if you go top of funnel with an eligibility for everything, it seemed to play with where Google was going. So that's why I got into it. And I love the name. So we launched it. We wanted to get into every government program we could think of. And here's where some of the mistakes come in. We wanted to launch a visa directory. I mean, you know how many visas there are? There's like 300 or 400. I can't even keep up with them. Like I need a page for every single one of those. Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, all the loan programs, like on and on and on. We had like 20 different sections. And before we really knew how to plan out content this way that we've been talking about, is we just were like, well, we need that top tail keyword, we need a category page, and we need 600 words on it. You know, that was the old way to do it. And you would just hire a writer and say, well, write about the H-1 visa program. You know, like I need 600 words, kick it back, my job's done. And that's not how it works anymore. But that's kind of what we did.
I'll take a quick pause, folks. Yeah. That's not how it works anymore. So it's really right. You need to talk to somebody quickly. And yes, if you're looking to build off of a keyword list and you haven't done your internal structures, you haven't built your clusters, you haven't done that type of research, the efficiency on that return is going to be ugly. And if you're leveraging subject matter experts involved and you're paying them top dollar, which I'm sure you can tell us a little bit about, Nate, you're not going to get the bang for your buck on that. So yeah.
Absolutely, you know, like we were a little more deliberate with it, but we certainly weren't doing all the stuff we've been talking about, running these tools, doing keyword gap analysis, looking at related questions, who, what, where, when, why. You know, we really did just put up like 5 or 6 subheadings and 600 words or 800 words on each of these things just to get something up, because it was kind of daunting. Like, and I feel like a lot of people, if they're starting a new site, can feel that way too. Like, I know where I want to be, but that means I need hundreds, if not thousands of pages on this topic. Where do I start? And that was like an easier, more traditional place to start, was just put up a bunch of crap about each of these programs. So it was a waste of money because the writers didn't have a firm outline on what to write. And it was a wasted effort, because it was an effort we had to kind of just go back and replicate in 2017, a year later, when we had learned all this stuff, when we weren't getting the traction we thought we would in search results. And what we ended up doing was, a year later, we went back and we're like, you know, our search traffic was just a dribble. And, you know, we're pretty good at this stuff. We're pretty confident. And we're like, we thought we'd be a little further along. What did we do wrong? We had learned a little bit about this from you and started to see more trends in it. And we went in and we took those 6 or 7 pages about immigration visas and we consolidated them into one. And we ran these tools, ran deep outlines, and got to this point where we had 3,000 words on a bunch of different immigration visa programs, and went back to that as a core and thought, okay, later we'll go back and write the ultimate long form guide to each little program. So we scaled back from 500 or 600 pages to just a few hundred, and went deeper with our content, and our traffic really started to take off. I think we went from 10,000 uniques at the beginning of the year to 180,000 later in the year, just with pruning pages and running some of these tactics and outlines. And then once we had done all that on the existing pages, we just ran that same process for all our new content we were creating. So it was really good.
Yeah, I know when you started using, you know, I was using MarketMuse, and then with some of your other tactics. I mean, that's a monthly number you're saying,
right? Right.
Yeah. I mean, So you're talking about going from, you know, having spent quite a lot of money, making sure you still leverage that investment, consolidated. We'll get into kind of what makes a support page strategy important, but you really went from nearly nothing to you know, multiple millions in less than a year.
Yeah. I mean, we went from a few leads a day to 300 leads a day. And this is what I believe was the one tactic that mattered. And I've replicated it on other sites since. So.
Oh, and whenever we see an eligibility.com page in a competitive landscape, we always look at it and do a little bit of a smirk, because you're dominating in MarketMuse's comprehensiveness factor, which is content score.
Yeah,
And
that's a good thing to point out, right? Because it feels really good to then go back to the tool, plug that in. I don't know how much people listening know about how it all works, but get a
and
content score spit back at you, and it's
Mhm.
78 or something. You know that all the competitors are 35s. It's
Yeah, exactly. And so you're in the situation where you've approached more of the user intent profiles, and you've hit on the things that matter for a reader naturally. And I think that the slide that's on my site, because you've mentioned Ahrefs or Achrefs depending on which world you live in. A SEMrush, answer the public for, just ideation. These are great solutions that work together. And if, doing some niche hunting with Ahrefs Content Explorer, analyzing competitive sites with a combination of MarketMuse and like the backlinks, internal backlinks solutions from Ahrefs and SEMrush. I mean, that's a deadly combination. It's really an amplifier that gives you an unfair advantage. And I think that you've been doing this manually for longer than almost anybody. It's pairing these two offerings. But what's been the difference in when you find a competitor that has that gap? We talked about understand if they're a government site, they're not moving very fast. You know that, right? Do you ever do an assessment of how much content those competitors are also publishing? Yeah.
I maybe a soft one. I don't. I think early on in my early research, I keep an eye on it when I'm
Mhm.
just trying to understand the general competition that I'm be facing. But
Gotcha.
it's more of a early on, it's how frequently do they seem to be updating it, and really just how deep their content is. Whether that's a content score
Okay.
MarketMuse can spit to me, or it's something that I can just eyeball and I can tell that
Mhm.
we're going to have a shot if we can piece together the things that 5 of these competitors do well, plus some of the things that none of them are doing, and
Mhm.
rank. And I mean, it works on planning new websites. It works on sorry, I'm getting a phone call from housekeeping here. They don't like being on but it also works for clients. Like I've got great examples of Zesty.io is a client that I've done some stuff with, and their organic traffic's really taken off this year. You're talking about a 6, 7, 8-year-old company that
Mhm.
does B2B marketing and has a CMS platform, and just applying this to how they plan their blog content. Uh,
Mhm.
a significant change in their organic traffic over 6 to 12 months. So it's a great thing for planning new websites and also for taking existing sites and juicing them up.
So tell me a little bit more about Zesty.io's process and what you've brought on like explicitly, because I know that's a tough space. They've got some tough competitors. What's been the real metric that you're looking for to make a decision to write or to update in that scenario?
Well, it's I guess it's a mix of new product offerings as they're putting them out. They're kind of on the cutting edge of some of the headless CMS things with their product. They have a lightning fast enterprise level CMS. So there's these burgeoning categories that they're jumping into, and I think it can give us a leg up as more people start to search for these things. You may look at something and see it like this is awareness is going to pop.
Mhm.
What can we pull out of these tools and apply to our subject matter expertise and build out 4 or 5 pillar pages on the website to be
Mhm.
some of the first to market and take advantage of that. And that's really helpful. Another company that I've been doing it for is an insurance wholesaler that signs up a lot of people, insurance agents to get middleman contracts. Very boring, right? So they've got this history with the websites that they've been around for a long time, and they just had kind of static informational pages, and now they're doing these long form guides on how the products they're offering to their insurance agents can benefit them, the benefits of those products, the product lines, deep descriptions of the different insurance companies, stuff that just wasn't there before. And it makes a huge difference in the organic leads that they get to come in, long tail stuff.
Dramatic. It is, and it's in some cases overnight. And we always like to say we love boring industries. Whether you're an oil refinery, rubber gloves, ball bearings, we've built plans for those, and it's they're really fun. It's fun to see how that expertise manifests on things that you have no idea when you go into them. I don't know anything about ball bearings, right?
Right.
But yeah, you see them as the people that are reading that site. You can watch them go through the site in the pattern that you wanted. They started here, they branched off there, and then they turned into a lead. And it's because you told the story that you really were an expert. And I think that
Right.
that's what that's what you're seeing with all of those examples. Um,
Yeah.
and all really, really great examples too. So when you are, you mentioned something before that was focused on, how do you define the next 75 pages you're going to create, or the first 75 pages you're going to create? What are what are the core metrics? What's the North Star metrics that you're looking for to say, these are the things we have to have? What goes into that planning? So.
Um, I, I think it's a mix of who you want to be eventually and who you can realistically compete with, like or in the first year. So I think a lot about, if you're building a website about fertility, you have to have costs and process and success stories and questions and answers. Like that's going to be there. Or about divorce, you have to have that too. You got to have the financial side, the process, all that. But it's the pages you create early on that are addressing some of these how-to questions instead of these big categorical keywords. That is how I think through it. So I do research on search volume, obviously, CPCs. It's kind of a mix of search volume, CPCs, gap analysis from these keyword tools, competition scores from things like SEMrush, and then also, and I guess really just those things, and then also just the look of the search results. How many of the competitors are choking up the same search results? Where are their search results where they're not? And you analyze all of those things and you say, all right, these are the 50 places I feel like I can make noise and get some momentum. That's how I do it.
And that's really cool. Cool description. So we've got really about doing your search engine result page research. It's thinking about things like, you're not going to make the decision solely with volume and isolation. I mean, that's the mistake we see so much, is only making those decisions based on volume and isolation. You're guessing about intent based on things like price or CPC, and
Right.
things like the how congested it may be. And so I think that's something you can really learn from, is to say, you've got to do the opportunity analysis. I know we have our own opportunity metric that takes all those things into account and then looks at our topic analysis technology, and tries to make that a lot easier, so that you can just layer on something that's specific to your business. One thing you did mention, though, that I think a lot of people forget, and I think it's something that a takeaway from this discussion would be that not every page on your site is going to be a traffic magnet. And those pages may and actually likely will contribute to the traffic magnets that you do have doing better. So there's so many times we're talking with people, and I know you're a huge advocate of this, and they'll look at pages solely based on their traffic. And they're not looking to say, does this contribute to my user experience? Does this contribute to my legitimacy? Does this contribute to providing support for a pillar page that is a natural flow? How much do you think about that, and what would you say to somebody who's doing an audit of a site and only looking at traffic? So.
Yeah, I think that's an important takeaway. Don't have traffic be your end all be all of what you want to go after. That's going to cause you to spin your wheels, get frustrated, and it's not really like building a solid foundation. I think that's the metaphor of what you're talking about. You do have to have these pages that are kind of your fiber, your oatmeal, your whatever. It's not the candy. And I think it just makes sense to think that Google is really smart now, and they know that if a site's going to invest in the time to answer all these different related questions, to build out a complete answer, the ultimate guide, the novel, the whatever you want to call it, to these topics, and spend the time to do that, then they're going to get rewarded medium term and long term, and that's really what SEO is about. So I think about it that way. I think that, and I just want to answer every question as possible. Like I used to only care about the vanity of top tail keyword rankings and them driving traffic, but now I see the value in building out this thing that's got a much stronger base beneath it, because all those things do add up, and that's the hard work that a lot of people aren't going to do. And Google is rewarding that. The last few years have actually been really fun SEO wise, because I've been able to take sites from nothing to a couple 100,000 in a year, or take sites that are kind of stagnant and really increase their traffic by building these content outlines, writing these things, and not like overloading them with links. Like back in the day, we just spent $500,000 on links and yeah, we win. Like that's not how it works either. It's a lot healthier, and it's kind of like, going to the gym and working out and doing core and abs and all that stuff, and not just doing the biceps. I think it's whatever metaphor you want to pick from the ones they're trying to throw out, shifting your thinking using these tools, and thinking kind of medium term, long term. Google's smart, play their game.
Nice. So I think you're kind of going from performance enhancing drugs to biceps to
Yeah.
a long-term gym strategy over time. I think that's where it does make it more fun. And the sites it's not still perfectly pure, right? There's still an
Mhm.
influence, a dramatic influence of off-page factors. Um,
Sure.
and it's not just about who writes the best content. It is there are you have to have a great internal structure of your site. You have to have, you do have to have, natural references to your site, and that's all going to come with great content, though. I mean, it does happen,
Yeah.
and I think that you're living proof of that. But it's about mature, the maturity of your company's content strategy, and it's that are you just keyword crazy? Are you focused on ego, or do you really want to make it so that when a reader comes to your site, they understand what you have to offer, they understand the content that you've written, and they value that. The likelihood of that person doing business with you is so much higher. And really, in the last, like you mentioned, the last 5, 6, 7 years, the best in the game as far as content strategists go, who are also SEOs, are people that are taking that seriously. And saying, if I've got a crummy page that um, you know ranks well in search and then they land on my site, I might convert that lead, but are they truly going to become a customer? Do they have any level of trust for me after
Yeah.
they?
And
Yeah.
if one should beget the other, it should become a cycle, right? Time on site, bounce rate,
Mhm.
average number of pages. All of these things should be improved by doing this sort of approach to content, which is really driven mostly by SEO initially, but it should benefit the user too. And I think
Mhm.
that's part of the reason Google favors it as well. And I think one little thing you did not mention is site speed too.
Mhm.
Nailing that. I've seen dramatic rises. Zesty, another good example. They eat their own dog food and use their own platform. And seeing sites
Nice.
that use ultra fast CMS platforms or have a good code structure internally, no matter what CMS they're using, it makes a big difference in rankings today too.
Yeah. So site speed being, a metric that's widely contested as its contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at its heart, though, it is, do you want to wait? Do you want to wait to get this information? It's
Right.
you don't know, what's the site speed by region. You've got to monitor all those things to really tell the story of are your prospects having any experience you desire them to have? And if you're the slowest site in that competitive cohort, you're in trouble. I mean,
Right.
it's fun. Or if you have a user experience problem that no one else has, if you're trying to do something sneaky, it just doesn't pass. It doesn't work anymore. Or if it does, you're going to see some decay in the next year to 2 years if you haven't already seen some decay and had to double down, buy more, or do something else. And so that's something to really key on. So I think a great takeaway from this discussion before we get into some Q&A that I see already on the line is to really be thinking about what are the metrics that you're focused on shooting for when you're doing content, when you're building content. How much planning can you afford to do? How much waste can you afford almost to say, hey, I'm going to spend all this money on content, and I'm okay with some of it not performing? Or do you really need to have a return on investment for everything that you build based on your timelines? And then really making an investment in process to say, if I'm going to put something out there, I want to make sure that it passes the sniff test with a subject matter expert. What other things would you add on, kind of takeaways from kind of your feedback and the stories that you told? So.
I don't know, man. I think you kind of nailed it. I think it's finding those gaps to get momentum, not chasing those top tail keywords, not chasing vanity and search metrics only,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to be spending a lot more time and money on planning this content out. You need to go after the right stuff based on where you're at with your website. You'd be a lot more aggressive in a couple of years when you've got more or strength, authority, what have you, and topical coverage. But early on, if that's the case, be prudent and spend a couple months even planning it out. And yeah, it's interesting to think about the costs and how they've shifted. I spend happy to spend a couple $100 worth of time and or money on outlining one piece of content, if not more, and to pay for expensive tools to help me do that. Whereas in the past, it was seriously just find freelance writer, send topic, get article back, much cheaper. But it would be a waste these days. It wouldn't be efficient. So that's definitely how it's shifted.
Yeah, it's for sure. So a couple questions have come in. So I think some people might know your background a little bit. And then you also mentioned that purchasing links might be something. Is purchasing links still part of your process? Or you don't have to say that. You can just say, is link development in any
Right.
construct, whether natural, whether is that still part of your content strategy overtly, or is it a function of something like influencer marketing?
No, it's still a piece of it. I still want to lay a nice consistent base of links. I used to have a link building company, so I've got a kind of an unfair advantage on
Right.
connections to assets for that, internal assets, whatever. But I think the volume certainly decreased. I mean, Google still needs to see links to your site, but I'll leverage blogger relationships. We'll
Hmm.
build a lot more the guys I see doing a better job with it now. They take the time to research, what users in that industry or vertical care about. They create a piece of content. They do manual outreach, and they get links that are going to be more organic than some of the other ones that we may have gone after in the past, and they're going to stick around. So I really like doing resource link building and building resource pages and doing outreach to .orgs and .edus and building links. But yes, it's certainly still a component. I'd say it's been dialed back from 80% of the fuel for the fire to 25%.
Hmm.
I think you just need to keep doing it at a steady pace. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right on. And when you say that, just if anyone's not familiar with those types of techniques, it's really about, it's similar to topic modeling, right? If you're writing about A and you want to be about C, sometimes those two topics don't relate. So you got to build content in the middle that tells a natural story that you're actually about A and C. And so when you're thinking about, content that is going to generate, references, thinking about why somebody would want to link to this. What are those reasons? And maybe there are additional content items you need to create that act as that bridge for you to appeal to somebody who would link to you. So I think that's a great piece of insight. Another question we had was, can you build your SEO strategy around blog posts if you're not able to update the website other than the blog? Wow, that's a tough one. How do you weigh in on that, Nate?
That's a good question. I think you can make some progress. You could
Yeah.
definitely improve.
Hmm.
That's not ideal. I think there's probably a way to brainstorm and make that kind of work. But I don't know. I've had success, I guess, writing topically focused like guide pages in a blog format and driving traffic. It's a little strange, I
Hmm.
guess, and a little bit harder, maybe even for user experience, depending on how that's set up. That's
Yeah.
uh, that's I don't know.
Yeah,
That's tough.
I've been in that situation before, both with clients as well as when I was an in-house, where our site it was basically an application, and how do you build content that lives around, while also I have to give this person questioning, part of your job is to uh, build the influence internally to be able to start to influence those. And I know that's hard. I've been there as well. But some things to think about are maybe recommendations. Maybe currently you can only touch the blog and blog posts, but what's the connection? What's the content that connects the main site, the core website, and your blog? And making recommendations for that bridge. Maybe that bridge is an ROI calculator, or something that solves a problem that is more connected to products, more connected to the product, but it isn't at its heart a product. You're going to start to think about ways to naturally get your feet into the core website, But you can do it with, with a few links. It really depends on how large the core website is, what type of content is there, um, and are there, can you make some justifications for being that next step? For example, if you've got a category page about ball bearings, and there's a natural, on your blog site, you referenced all those applications, how you would apply them, what industry expertise. It is going to be natural that someone internally is going to understand, oh wow, we actually should educate the audience here. So you've got to start to make that case, and I know that's a tough world to live in, but you can get there by trying to build bridges. But you can still do well with just that blog and live on the value of a handful of links internally. It's just going to be a little bit harder hill to climb, and you may need to look at somebody who can validate your recommendations internally if nobody is listening internally, and that looking to an agency, looking to a SaaS provider that also provides professional services that can validate your ideas. So that's something to think about. Great question. Pruning content, Nate. You were just talking about it. It is one of the most widely misunderstood concepts in search. When do you delete?
Well, I told you my experience with that with eligibility.
Right.
I deleted I301. I moved some things and rearranged things, and I felt like I went deeper on the topics. We had a lot of 6-page ultimate guides to some of these programs. So you got /1/2/3/4 is like, this should all be one. So and going through and doing that, copy and moving some of that content over to the primary pillar page, rewriting around it, working it more intuitively in there. That's where we saw a lot of gains.
Yep.
I would test it on a few categories and start to see those main category pages start to rank for those longer tail searches we were going after with some of the thinner pages. So if you've got a scenario like that where you can cluster some of those things together, move them all to one place, and focus on longer form pages, less pages, I've seen that work really well. So that's a bit of an anecdotal offer. I'm sure you've seen more complicated cases.
Well, you're almost talking about it almost always being a consolidation or a yes and in this situation. I mean, for me, it's always unless somebody historically has written content that truly doesn't meet the needs of any users, and for one reason or another, I am adamant I do not want to make an investment in this topic. If I see a page that is mismatched on intent, the users who are getting to it are not having a great experience. My bounce rates are disgusting. If I'm not really servicing the user well, I'm going to think long and hard. This needs to be updated. This needs to be consolidated. Or is it truly so off base that it needs to go and be redirected? But almost always I'm looking at consolidation, and then I'm also looking to say, I need to write new content or update this page to truly meet the needs of a different audience. So I might have attracted a different audience than I wanted. So really the deletion of content is truly focused on usability and engagement metrics for me. And that's really the only way that I'm ever consciously deleting, or in some cases, if it's a situation where a market has changed and something that I have is actually hurting my business for one reason or another. Those would be my rare cases. Yeah.
Good answer, Jeff. That's why you're wearing the blazer.
Hey, you got to break the corduroy out when Nate's on the line. So here's a good one. How do you drive traffic to articles you write short term? So that quick promotion. And then I'll parlay this question because it's such a good one into how do you get your spike rates quicker? How do you increase the slope on your publishing success?
I don't know if I have a hack to that. I think my expectation is to see progress on a somewhat consistent basis. So yep. I go into it with a plan that I'm going to create these 75 pages. I'm going to build some links, and then I'm going to look around and see if I learn anything from that and what's starting to get indexed, what's starting to rank. I've had more time to breathe and look at competitors, and I just kind of rinse and repeat. I don't try to force that. It's too old. I've been doing this too long to have to try to do that. And maybe it's a luxury from the projects I'm involved in. I understand if you're in-house at a place or you're working with a client, that timeline means a lot. But I've chosen to opt out of that being a problem, and I just keep doing what I'm doing, and in the long run it works. So there's my bad answer.
Don't worry, I'll get to that, but I'll just
All
get
right.
a little I'll get a little adamant on this. You
Yeah.
gotta hustle. You gotta hustle. All right. You gotta know your historical social media traffic line, how much it is. You gotta know what your email list can produce. And you've got to get everyone in your company to hustle. And they've got to see the results. And you got to build that internal influence to get that promotion out. Um, it's not shameless. It's not shameless to promote your content in your business's content. And it's not just a plug. You're saying this is a page of content that's making my prospects or my customers' lives better. So why wouldn't I put my heart into it? Why wouldn't my coworker that sits next to me in a cube or in my open office, whatever your structure of office is, why wouldn't they promote this article? Make them justify that. Get that internal company promotion, and then you'll know how much that can produce. And you've got to develop a hustle strategy. I think that those are some quick wins. Influencers, having them on speed dial. Nate, I think you've probably gotten emails from me asking to promote posts, and I know you have, and it's really it's truly getting guerrilla, making sure you know what those types of campaigns could produce, and having a effort to results graph, and saying how many of these things do I want to take on with each of my posts, only my marquee posts or otherwise. That's about what we've got for questions. That's one I'll finish it off with because I really love it. But I did want to give you some time, Nate, to talk about opt-out life. It's one of my new favorite things. And it's you're also with another great friend of mine, Dana Robinson. So tell me a little bit about opt-out life and what that's been. And everybody needs to go to what site and watch what podcasts and what videos?
Well, it's optoutlife.com. It's Dana. You mentioned my partner. He wrote a book called Opt Out, which you can get on Amazon. And it's his personal story of, 20, 25 years of building a life and lifestyle that on the outside looks very successful. And you'd think he was worth $20 million based on where he lives and the things he gets to do and how he travels. But really, he's a working attorney. He's an entrepreneur. He owns investment real estate. And he lives life with a certain set of principles for income, expenses, and managing his time and stress levels. And it's really become kind of his Bible and his blueprint. And I thought that it opens with a story of him being stressed out and selling everything and going to Bali with his wife when his kid went to school. So there's that to kind of hook you in. But I loved the book. I've known Dana for a long time, and we've been hosting networking events in San Diego for 10 years, bringing together like-minded people that opt-out label fits. So we took the book, we turned it into a podcast, relatively popular podcast where we feature the life stories of people who have opted out. And it's digital nomads, it's people with jobs even. You'd be surprised at how we kind of spin this to show that people are choosing to live a life that they want to live now and not waiting for something down the line, not holding back, and how to set that up for yourself. So what do you need to do to have multiple income streams, and how do you need to approach life in different ways? So it's been fun to do for me as a project. I've loved telling the stories and doing the production on the podcast. We've done some video episodes you can check out, and we're building it into kind of a community and tribe. We did an event for about 50 people in San Diego last fall that was pretty successful, and we're going to do some bigger ones this year. And the place to start is just go to optoutlife.com, check out the podcast if you like, and get on the email list. We're starting kind of the tribe as a paid membership thing where we're consultating with everybody and helping them with their plans. And it's been a fun little project, man. I kind of like having a brand, and it's different than all this search stuff we're talking about. So it's where I get to exercise some creative muscles and also network and talk about it. It's kind of fun to tell people at War Room that I got a podcast called Opt Out and not just tell the same boring search marketing stuff.
Same boring search marketing stuff. Great way to wrap up the call today. No, it is, and the production value is wonderful, and I personally love it. I'm like, oh, I know that person. And, oh yeah, they're on the beach. You spend most of the time in those videos on the beach,
That's right.
and that's really cool. But once again, this recording will be up, and thank you. If any questions didn't get answered, I or someone from the team will follow up and give you some feedback. And thank you so much for listening and sticking around. It looks like almost everybody who joined us today stuck around till still right now. So high five, Nate, and thanks for everybody for putting this on. Join us next month for our next in the content strategy series. Also go on to our site, download the recordings. We've got some great content strategy webinars from kind of visionaries in our space like Kevin Indig, Jeff Baker from Grafton. There's another number of them that get into really specific tactical topics like we talked about today. And once again, Nate, thank you so much for joining us from Mexico when you should be outside. And enjoy the rest of your time there. And I'll talk to you real soon. And again, everybody, there's some resources attached here for the case study. There's also one for content creation process improvements internally. And then come see me and the MarketMuse team at Content Tech in April in San Diego, where Nate lives. Call back, and thanks again, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Cheers. Bye-bye.